Stand therefore, and fasten the belt of truth around your waist, and put on the breastplate of righteousness. All you need is love, sang the Beatles in the 1960s, and the song became the anthem of the beautiful people. This was the movement which was a protest against trying to solve the violence and problems caused by the Vietnam War and the Cold War, and was also a rebellion against the stern puritanical disapproval that took the joy and spontaneity from life. In the 60s there seemed to be hippies protesting peacefully everywhere, and you probably remember that memorable image of a young girl putting a bright orange daisy down the barrel of a soldier's gun. So where did all the flower people go? Well, many killed themselves with drugs, others will have earned fortunes and abandoned their gentle principles for the hard-headed world of business, whilst others just faded with their flowers into the world of reality, because for most of them their sentimental view of love wasn't a strong enough guide to living a life when coming up against the cold, hard cynicism of self-seeking ambition, greed and power, which underpins much of society. Love is not simple. It takes many forms, and the hippies' view of love, perhaps in the end, lacked the element of self-sacrifice needed in serving others. Some types of love are sentimental and easy, whilst others are extremely demanding. Jesus spoke about a God who loves us, and to illustrate this, he told the parable of the prodigal son, the story of a father who loved so much that he could forgive his son anything, with an utterly unselfish, self-giving, non-judgmental love. Jesus showed his love in action by laying down his life on the cross. It was this sacrificial love that convinced the disciples that he was one with God, for this was a love which hurts, a love that takes us out of our comfort zone, a love that dares and is utterly selfless, and is far from sentimental, the perhaps more selfish love of many hippies. And this was another reason, I think, that the hippies faded away with their flowers, for they realized that to sustain the movement would have required a great deal of sacrifice. When Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment, everyone who stood around him would have agreed with him as he replied, "Love God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind," because every Jew would have understood this commandment, because their principal prayer, the Shema, began with these same words, and that prayer is the same today as it was 2,000-3,000 years ago. St. Augustine would later say, "Love God and do what you like," meaning that if we love God, that we will do nothing to hurt or go against him. Jesus then added a second commandment: "You shall love your neighbour as yourself." He puts the two commandments together into one to make a summary of the law. Thus our love for God is to be reflected in our love for each other. When we love God, we're able to love others as we ought to, and yet we can only love God when we have learnt to love others. Love which we learn through our family and friends, acquaintances and strangers, through experience and from just learning to live with and amongst people, acknowledging their needs and accepting their differences. Love is a circle, a ring, that you could have engraved around it these words: when you know love, you can love. When we can love, we can live. And on the inside of the ring you could have these words added: love God and one another. All we need is love. Here is an illustration of Jesus' words in practice. It's a Christmas day in the 1860s in the home of an American family whose father is away at war. Mother has gone to morning church and her 4 daughters await her return so that they can eat their Christmas breakfast, which will be their Christmas present this year, as money is tight. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, reflects Jo, one of the sisters. Mother returns home, but before the family can eat, she has something to say. Girls, not far from here lies a poor woman with a newborn baby. 6 children are huddled into one bed to keep from freezing, for they have no fire. There's nothing for them to eat over there, and the oldest boy came to tell me they're suffering from hunger and cold. My girls, will you give them your breakfast as a Christmas present? The 4 girls were all unusually hungry, and for a moment none of them spoke. Only a moment, for Jo exclaimed, "I'm so glad you came before we began." They soon had packed the food and were ready, and the procession was set out. Fortunately it was early, and they went through the back streets so few people could see them, and no one could laugh at the strange party. A poor, bare, miserable room it was, with broken windows, no fires, ragged bedclothes, and a sick mother, wailing baby, and a group of pale, hungry children huddled together under one old quilt. How the big eyes stared and the blue lips smiled as the girls went in. "Oh God, it is the good angels come to us," said the poor mother, crying for joy. I wonder if it was the family's own fault that they were both starving, cold and sick. Or could it possibly be that they were caught up in the consequences of one of the bloodiest wars ever fought, the American Civil War? Ordinary people trapped by personal and political ambition. The United Nations have a definition for what a just war is. I wonder whether they have a definition for what a just withdrawal from war is. As we await to see what will unfold in Afghanistan, can it be right to wash your hands and simply say as you dry them, it was their own fault? Perhaps the fault of the rulers and politicians, but surely not the fault of the farmers, the shopkeepers, nurses, teachers, students, doctors, the ordinary people, who I would guess were more than willing and more than able to live in peace. Love God and love your neighbour as yourself. Louisa May Alcott got it in one in that extract from the first page of her great book, Little Women, as did the Beatles in their song, All You Need Is Love. And St. Paul, when he said that we should put on the armour of God. Leaders of the world, the time has come for you to stand and fasten the belt of truth around your waist and put on the breastplate of righteousness.